Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokemon Emerald video. Today I am going to use one of the original 151 Pokemons from Generation 1. The star of today's video is going to be Tropius, a somewhat famous Pokemon, at least compared to Farfetch'd. Tropius had a lot of appearances in both the games and anime too, like in that episode where Ash caught like 30 of them in the Safari Zone. As far as rules go, I am still going to use the same ones, so I can only use my starter in combat. I can't use items from my bag in battle. I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Tauros seems a pretty good Pokemon. It has a lot of attack and speed, which are always nice when playing through a solo Pokemon run. The thing that might hold him back a little bit is the move pool. Sure, it has a lot of moves, but pretty much all of the special attacks are going to be useless because of the poor special attack. The initial moveset is very similar to what a starter might have, but unlike them, we have stab on tackle, so taking on the first encounter against me was very easy. Not long after that, while making our way through the first forest, we are stopped by this Sylph guy being chased by a Team Aqua Grunt. He only has a Poochyena on his team that easily falls in a couple of tackles. That guy is generally very easy unless he spams Sand Attack. Next we have the first gym, where Winona defeats me a couple of times. So I went to the Whismur cave and trained a bit, came back with a couple more levels, and that plus a bit of luck was just what I needed to have a fair shot at defeating her. I was hoping that Tauros' good stats and a decent move pool for this point in the game would have been enough to take on Roxanne without having to train too much, but unfortunately, since we only have normal moves and those are resisted by all of her Pokémons, we could not defeat her in the first few attempts. And to be honest, this one should have been a failed one too, at least for what I can see, but I got quite lucky and with a couple of crits I was able to take down her team with over half of my HP left over. Now that we have the first badge in our pocket, we can do the usual stuff around town, and that involves rescuing the Pico from this other Team Aqua Grunt, or maybe it's the same guy, I'm not 100% sure, but as you can see, he is still very easy, and with one hit he is defeated. Our next encounter is going to be an optional one, specifically the one against May just before leaving town. Her team did improve a bit, but since we now have a much more powerful move in Horn Attack, she is defeated in a couple of hits. I skipped Brawly since I was not sure that with just one decent normal attack I would have been able to defeat him, considering that I am weak to his fighting stab moves. So I moved on to Slateport, where I found a couple more Team Aqua Grunts who are in desperate need of defeating too. As usual, their teams are not particularly powerful, and the only thing they are able to do is a little bit of cheap damage with a rough skin. After dealing with that, I trained a bit more, and soon after that I had the next encounter, this one is not optional, against May. Her now evolved starter was a bit of an issue since it now has double kick, but my damage is through the roof, so I did not leave her enough time to defeat me. Then I had more training to do around Moville to prepare for the next gym challenge. Watson was not too scary this time around. I have a lot of damage that I can use to take down most of his Pokémons. The only problematic bit is Magneton. Since he is part Steel type, my attacks were not very effective, but he was still defeated in just 3 hits. I was a bit surprised about that, but I'm glad it did not confuse me. With Watson gone, we can use the TM Rock Smash out of combat, and that lets us explore a lot more of the region, until we end up in Meterfall Caves, where we learn some stuff, like the fact that Maxi is about to trigger a volcano, and of course we cannot let that happen, so we quickly reach him and challenge him to a duel. Of course, here is where the Mighty start appearing, and that's not exactly great for us, because we are a pretty much only physical attacker. Thankfully, his team is not very powerful at this point in the story, so even if my attack has been lowered, I am still able to defeat all of his Pokémons without having too many issues. After stopping this guy and having a quick chat with Archie, we can descend from the volcano and reach the next town, where we have to face the Far Gym Leader. I was a bit worried about Flannery, mostly because I did not know how well Tauros could handle her overheats, especially because my nature lowers my special defense. Fortunately, I did not have to find out, since her Torkoal used attraction and then decided to go for Body Slam for some reason. That gave me enough turns to defeat it before it could do anything too dangerous. Remember Brawly? Well, it's time to pay him a quick little visit. At this point, my level is way higher than his, and it's no surprise that my attacks are a one-shot on all of his Pokémons. So after destroying each and every one of his Pokémons, we can quickly snatch his badge and move on to the next gym leader, who of course is going to be Norman, our dad. He is usually very dangerous because he has Slacking, which is a powerhouse at this point in the game, and I did make a bit of a mistake. I sort of forgot about counter, but somehow I survived, and then I used Rest, which I just randomly learned through level up a little while ago. That was very scary, and from there I tried to play it a bit more safe, going for Pursuit whenever he had a turn, since that move is dark and cannot be countered. Unfortunately, that strategy did not work too well, since he used a lot of facades. Even so, I was still able to finish that big Yeti, and from there things were a lot simpler, since the rest of his team, while not super easy, is nothing compared to Slacking. This is probably the most important gym in the game, because now we can use Surf, and since we all know the IGN meme, it should be obvious why it's so important. Sooner or later we reach the Weather Institute, where we find Team Aqua Admiral Shelley. As usual, she is defeated in a couple of attacks, since her team is nothing to write home about. After rescuing the scientists here, we can move on, but we are immediately stopped by May for another challenge. This time her team is a bit more annoying to deal with. Pelipper survives a hit and stalls me with Protect, which is not very nice on her part, and later on the Lombre will use Fake Out to stall me again. Even if that was the case, the fight was very simple, and with that we can move on to the next town, where we find the 6th gym leader ready to fight us. Winona specializes in flying types, which are not really a problem for me today. Or at least they shouldn't be, but unfortunately she also has a Skarmory into the mix. Of course, since that guy is mostly steel type, my normal attacks are not going to be very effective. I tried to use hidden power and see if that would be any useful, but unfortunately it's a psychic type and the damage seems pretty low. Anyway, much like the previous Magneton, the damage is surprisingly high, even though the type matchup is not in my favor. And with that big problem out of the way, the rest of the team is easy as cake, and like that we have earned the 6th badge. Moving on, we have one last match against May in front of them all. I do not have a whole lot to say about her team. It did improve a little bit with the addition of Tropius, which is quite tanky, but that only makes the fight last a little bit longer. It does not make it any harder. Also, by defeating her, I have now access to the move Substitute, which will be very helpful later on. As mentioned at the start of the game, Tropius' moveset is not particularly good, so I was kind of struggling to see what else I could add. For now it's going to be the same, but there will be some changes later on. Getting back on track, it's now time to defeat Maxi again. His team this time is quite a bit more scary, mostly because his levels are quite a bit higher, and his Zubat now evolved into a much more powerful Crobat. It survives a hit thanks to the Intimidate and confuses me. Fortunately, I am not weak to flying, so even if he managed to land a couple of air cutters on me, that would have not been too bad. I also get very lucky and never hit myself, so the fight against him was a walk in the park. Talking about easy stuff, the next Admiral is also going to be a non-issue with his team of only 2 Pokémons. Once again, Intimidate is annoying since it prevents me from one-shotting those guys and makes the fight drag on a little bit longer than it had any need to be. Especially because this time I end up hitting myself quite a bit, but once again I was not very close to being defeated. After taking care of this guy too, we have quite a lot of grinding to do, because I needed to get ready for the next gym fight. Not going to lie, Tate and Liza were very scary. It's a 2v1 with half of their team is rock type, so my normal moves are not going to be too helpful. Also, they have mostly special attackers, which is not going to be too nice, considering my pretty low special defense. Fortunately, things lined up very well for me. Both Lunatone and later Solrock were just left outside of potion range after a return, but low enough where a second hit would bring them down. Meanwhile, Claydol kept spamming Earthquake, which I am actually happy about, because if he used Psychic, there was a decent chance it would lower my special defense even more, and with that it would start to deal a lot of damage very quickly. Claydol just barely holds on the first time I attack him, and here I thought I would have to do the usual potion game, but the second hit is a little bit more powerful and brings him down in one shot. With the Psychic badge acquired too, we now have to deal with the remaining members of the Team Magma. With the Psychic badge acquired too, we now have to deal with the remaining members of Team Magma. Fortunately, this time we are aided in this double fight by the ex-champion Steven. The fight against Team Magma should not be too hard considering that they generally rely on RNG strategies, and unfortunately for them, this time they have two potential targets, so the RNG debuff is going to be spread evenly between me and Steven. Not that it matters, since Tauros, even after an Intimidate, is still dishing out a lot of damage, more than enough to two-shot everything on their team, leaving them with not a whole lot of turns to do their usual shenanigans. Fortunately, RNG strategies are not too powerful, as I experienced firsthand in the Shroomish video. That means we can get through this fight too unscathed, and with that we are done with this island. As a reward, we are given the dive gem by Steven that we immediately have to use to reach the seafloor cave, where Archie is about to wake up Groudon. Of course, one thing leads to the next, and we end up in a fight against him too. Somehow his Pokémons seem to be less tanky than what Maxi had. Maybe they have different IVs or IVs, but it seems weird for the Pokémon Company to go in that much of a detail. That does not matter too much, as they all fall down anyway too. With that, the red orb activates on its own and wakes up the legendary, and from here we have to do the usual stuff with Rayquaza. While I do that, could you take a second, scroll down a little and leave a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share the video, and since you are already there, why not leave a comment? That helps out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you! After finishing the shameless plug, we can resume the game and take on the last gym. This time it's headed by Juan, who specializes in water types. Once again, that's not really a thing we care about, as we can just return our way through his team. The only thing I was sort of worried about is Kingdra and his double team strategies, but since my damage is extremely high, just a return is enough to defeat the seahorse, preventing any double team frustration. Now that we can use all of the HMs, we can enter the Victory Road, where we are stopped just a couple feet after entering by Wally. His team is not that strong, but since I forgot to teach Earthquake, his Magneton could still be a problem. Fortunately for me, much like every other Steel type in the game, he does not seem to have the highest defense stat, and so with just a few returns, I can bring down this Magnet too. Now that this sort of tank is defeated, the rest of his team falls down like a house of cards, and in no time we are free to resume our journey through the Victory Road. Sooner or later we come out on the other side, and after just a little bit of preparation I step into the league. The first member of the group of trainers that we have to fight here is Sidney, and once again the RNG strategies are in full effect. Fortunately, I got Substitute, which is a great move for the Elite Four in this game. It prevents a lot of annoying moves getting through. With only my attack being lowered, the rest of Sidney's team is not too big of a deal. Sure, they mostly are not defeated in one hit, but there is not a whole lot they can do to stop me, especially because they would have to get through the Substitute first. One defeated, 4 more to go. Pheobe is generally annoying because of course, but that is neutralized by Substitute. Unfortunately, I do not have enough damage to defeat her Pokémons in a quick manner, and that caused me to run out of Earthquake PPs. While I maybe could have used all of the other moves and then struggled them, I did not think that would have worked, and I also did not want to waste a bunch of time, so I just took the couple of resets and restarted with a different plan. This time I equipped a Leppa Berry, which will pop when I ran out of PPs for the first move and restore 10 uses. That should be just what I needed, since it's not like I was running out of PPs midway through the fight. I just needed a couple more to finish taking care of her last Dusclops. Also, yeah, I know there is the cursor on screen. I sort of made an oopsie and deleted the OBS settings, so I had to remake them and forgot to remove that. It will be gone in the next video. Not to mention the issue with the time around the Watson part of the video. Anyway, eventually we can get through the thick ghost and defeat Phoebe's team. Next up is Glacia, and she is a lot more simple. Her team does not have anything that worries me too much, just a bunch of ice types that, while they can do some decent damage with Ice Beam or stuff like that, and they are sort of tanky, they somehow are still unable to survive a hit from return. I was really thinking they would put up more of a fight, especially after the Phoebe debacle. I guess I underestimated the impact of a stab on a move. Next up is the most threatening member of the Elite Four by far, and Drake was able to defeat me with a sneaky crit. I did not have any particular strategy for this fight, but in the second attempt I set up a substitute at the start, just to take a hit or two, hopefully leaving me more HP to deal with his dragons. Shelgon is a bit annoying since he makes me waste a bunch of turns with the Protect, but from here things were not looking too great for me. Sure, I deal a lot of damage, but that's not quite enough to one-shot his Pokémons, so they often end up surviving. Fortunately, they decide to set up with Dragon Dance, and somehow I am still faster than them. Also, another mystery is how the heck did the Substitute survive that earthquake? Seems far-fetched to me. Also, as you just saw, Salame's Intimidate did not work. Why didn't anybody tell me earlier? That makes physical attackers' life much easier in this game. From now on, Substitute will be a permanent addition to any physical attacker I will use. Anyway, time to end this. Wallace is the champion, and as usual he likes to use his water types. This time around, I do not have any setup moves, unless you consider Substitute a setup, so I can immediately start to attack his Pokémons. They are quite tanky, and even though my damage is very high, there's a decent chance I'm not going to be able to one-shot all of them. Fortunately, most waste their time with a status move like Leech Seed or something like that. Much like in the previous match, the Substitute somehow leaves from all the way from the start of the fight, which is very unusual, at least in my experience. But that's great for me, since with the Substitute up, when Gyarados will come out, his Intimidate will not work either, and that allows me to make quick work of both him and the Milotic that comes out next. He does break the Substitute finally and waste my time with potions, but I am going to set up another one because I knew Milotic would use Toxic. That gives me a free turn effectively, and thanks to that I can soon after finish off the Snake Eel Lady thing, and just like that Tauros become the champion of the Juan region. While not the easiest of runs, it was sort of fun to use Tauros, and I'm glad it received a bit more attention with the alternate version in the last Pokemon games. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, etc, etc. Leave a comment if you have any feedback or video ideas, and I'll see you next week. Bye!